Oh, hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. And today we are going to do a 2026 mock draft for our beloved Saints. And we're doing it this week because, according to Tankathon, if the draft were to happen today, the Saints would be selecting number one overall. Well, we've been in this position before. We were projected to be the worst team in the league, and we maintained that number one overall selection for a couple of weeks because we never won a game. We finally win a game against the Giants. I think that bumped us up to pick five or something like that. I believe I did a mock draft at that point. And, well, yeah, eventually, the Jets had to win a game. The only one now is the Titans, the Jets, the Dolphins. I mean, these are the teams that we're swimming with, the Browns. And these are the picks that the Saints are allocated. I'm doing this mock draft on the Pro Football Network draft simulation. So they do not have a compensatory fourth round pick for the Saints in this lineup. We start off with pick one overall. In round two, they give us pick 35. Now, in reality, the first pick in round two would be 33. Not sure why. And in round three, we get pick 66. In reality, that pick could be anything depending on any third round compensatory picks that are allocated. Since this site hasn't allocated one for the Saints, I'm assuming they haven't allocated any compensatory picks for anyone. That pick should be 65, and in this simulation, it's 66. So, those caveats in mind, we don't have a fourth round pick, we don't have a seventh round pick. Round five, pick 144. Round six, pick 182. So, the Saints have five total picks right now, and that is how it's set in reality right now. If we get the compensatory pick for losing Paulson and Debo in free agency, that'll be a very late fourth round pick. It'll probably be around 138, something like that. I mean, right next to that fifth round pick, which is a high fifth round pick for the Saints. So, people complain about not getting that fourth round pick potentially. And I'm constantly reminded of the fact that it's a really low fourth. An extra pick is an extra pick, and the Saints can use all the players they can get. So, what do you do with the first overall pick? If you have a quarterback in mind that you want, you got to get the guy. And right now, the performance of the quarterbacks that may be in the draft, it's been highs and lows. There's been a few that are consistent, people like Ty Simpson out of Alabama, but he doesn't have the physical stature and what you're looking for in a quarterback. A lot of teams, I find, focus on that way too heavily, and it's for good reason. You got to physically be able to handle playing quarterback in the NFL, and a stud with the size like Lenora Sellers or even Drew Aller is very tempting for a team. You hope you can work out the kinks. And then at the same time, you have these smaller guys. I'll talk about a guy that's on our roster, Jake Hayner, and on our practice squad. His numbers in college were so good, and he's able to read, he's able to deliver fast, he's got all of the special techniques that a quarterback needs to have. And you're like, wow. And then you look at him physically, and he doesn't hold up to the likes of a Lenore Sellers or a Drew Aller. And then you get him in real time football, and it just all falls away. And it doesn't happen that way with everyone. Tom Brady didn't have the stature. Drew Brees certainly didn't have the stature, but they had the intangibles and were able to succeed in the league. So it's a tough, it's a tough gig. You have to have a quarterback in the draft that not only has the size, but also has the production. And you're just not getting that in the college football right now. So I'm not sold on spending the first overall pick on a quarterback, though a lot of teams right under us in the top five are willing to get a quarterback. You're probably going to get a really nice package to move out of the first pick. And yeah, I wish I could get a phone call from all of the teams picking in the top 10 and negotiate until I can get the best deal. But in this Pro Football Network simulation, trades were offered, and I did accept one to trade down. Now, here's my caveat before we move on to the draft about picking a quarterback. Uh, you still got half of the college season left to go, and then even more importantly, you've got the playoffs after that. And if a couple of these quarterbacks make the playoffs, and a lot of them should, you're going to see how they perform against the best of the best. And if there are a couple of quarterbacks who can prove themselves in the postseason in college, it'll rise their draft stock drastically. So a guy like Fernando Mendoza, who's physically gifted, okay, he's playing with a team that's, not typically known as one of the best teams, but they are, a top 10 team in college and they're likely going to make the playoffs. And if Mendoza can get in there and beat SEC teams in the postseason and take his team to the championship, that's going to go a long way for me personally. So yeah, I like Mendoza. Would I take him with the first overall pick? I don't think I would right now. This team has too many needs, and I'm not sure if I'm getting another Tyler Shuck based on what I've seen this year from Mendoza and what's happened so far. These guys can prove a lot. Dante Moore is another one, the quarterback out of Oregon. I really like that kid. And if he can get Oregon into the playoffs and win a couple of games against this, tough sled of teams they're going to have to play, then it's going to prove a lot to me. So Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza would be the two I would consider at number one. But like I said, I traded down, and the team I traded down with is the Cleveland Browns. Right now, they have the fourth overall pick, and they have a second first round pick in this draft. That second first round pick at this point is number 19 overall. So if I can get three number ones, typically what I would like to get is two number ones and two number twos and a future number one. If you do a one swap, a round one swap, and then you pick up a two, and then next year you get their one and their two. That's kind of the deal we're talking about if I'm going to remain in the top five. So that's what I'm looking for. Two ones and two twos. With Cleveland, I'm going to get three ones, a two, and a three. So this is how the deal goes down. I give Cleveland the number one overall pick. Cleveland gives me pick four overall, pick 19 overall. And I'm also going to get Cleveland's first round pick next year. And that's a first round pick that you're probably really going to like because Cleveland, even if they go quarterback, maybe especially if they go quarterback with this first overall pick, it's probably going to be a really good pick next year. So three number ones, plus I get their number two and their number three this year. And that's a pretty good deal. Pick four overall, pick 19 overall, pick 38 overall, pick 69 overall, and their first round pick next year. Now, is this a deal that you guys would like? I was able to get two ones this year, a one next year, and a two this year and a two next year from the Rams in another simulation. Plus, I got their third round pick this year and a player. So to me, that was the ultimate. Three ones, two twos, a three, and a player. That was the ultimate. But that's not what I get here. But this is a good deal for me. That's our new allotment of draft picks now. Instead of having five, we've got eight. And I'm good with this. And I'm ready to roll. Cleveland takes with the first overall pick, quarterback Dante Moore out of Oregon. The second overall pick, I believe, went to the Jets, and they chose quarterback Fernando Mendoza, Indiana, right? So, pick three, I believe, went to the Dolphins or the Titans. It might have been the Titans. And they chose an offensive lineman. So that put the Saints on the board at pick four, and the best two players in college football are still sitting there. You've got safety Caleb Downs out of Ohio State. I could take whatever wide receiver I want, and now I love Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State, but I also love Cornell Tate out of Ohio State. And I think there's some good depth at wide receiver in this year's class. But I decided to go with the best player, number one rated player on everyone's board, and I take him with pick four in the 2026 NFL Draft. New Orleans Saints select edge rusher slash defensive end Ruben Bane Jr. out of Miami. Ruben Bane Jr., 6'3", 275 pounds. He's a junior. 275 pounds. Now, I think this is completely ironic and hilarious that we as a Saints fan base have complained about Dennis Allen drafting big defensive ends. We wanted to get faster because the running quarterbacks were getting away from us, and we were missing out on every other big defensive end. And then we finally get a new coaching staff, and everyone says Ruben Bain is the guy to get if you're going to get an edge rusher. A big defensive end. Imagine that. Well, I don't have any issues with big defensive ends, especially guys at a big uh, at a big program that's performing very well. He doesn't have a lot of sacks this year. I think he only has one sack, maybe two, but he's just dominant, and he's dominant in the way that you see translate into the NFL very well. I mean, he's strong, he's big, but he's really fast. For 275 pounds, he can probably line up wide out and come in pretty effectively. So, and to also keep him in on rundowns with his size. So, Bane is a guy that I'm not scared to draft. And I think moving down from pick one to pick four and still getting the best player in the draft is a great deal for the Saints. And guess what? We have another first round pick. And when it comes up, I have a couple of options here. Cornell Tate at wide receiver has been taken, and Jordan Tyson has been taken. My next favorite wide receivers, even though people love Lemon out of USC, I'm a little partial to Denzel Boston out of Washington because of his size. He's a bigger guy than Lemon. We could use a playmaker, and either one would be great. But neither one is the best wide receiver. I've missed out on those first two options, but the best cornerback is still on the board. Mansour Delane is usually a guy rated second or third on the cornerback boards, but Delane was drafted already in this simulation. But the number one cornerback is still there, and that's who the Saints take with pick 19 in the 2026 NFL Draft. The New Orleans Saints select cornerback Germad McCoy out of Tennessee. Now, some people have an incomplete on his evaluation. He's been injured this year and has missed a lot of time, but I don't know if he's back and playing now. I think he is. But he was the number one cornerback in everyone's mind coming out of last year, and he's got such great tape from his time in college. And, he's a solid, solid player, a guy that should translate to the NFL very well. He's 6 foot, 193 pounds. He is a junior, and he can play zone or man. I think having a stud at cornerback is something this team needs. Yeah, I believe in Quincy Riley, and I believe in his development. and I think he's going to be a solid player. But I'm not going to pass up on McCoy. We've got a lot of questions still with not only Riley, but with Kool-Aid McKinstry. And then do we re-sign Alante Taylor to that big contract? Even if we do, and you think we should, Taylor plays a lot of nickel. So I'm going to go with McCoy. We're going to have another body there, and Quincy Riley's going to have to play out of his mind to maintain a starting role. And of course, Isaac Yadam. It's just going to be some quality veteran depth. We're going to have McCoy and McKinstry out there with Riley waiting in the wings and Taylor playing nickel, and we're going to have some really good depth at cornerback. I'm excited about that. And now we are entering the second round, which, because of my move, we have two second round picks now. It's really nice to be able to address all of these needs for the Saints. At this point is when I feel like taking a quarterback in this draft makes a little more sense because I have, some varying feelings about all of these guys. I mean, I just don't want to pull the trigger. Now, in reality, if I'm part of the organization and I fall in love with a quarterback, I'd probably take him at 19. And I'm doing this as a fan. My favorite quarterback right now in the draft, I like Mendoza because of his physical ability, but right there with Dante Moore is Ty Simpson out of Alabama. And that's a guy that falls into the second round, so I decide to pull the trigger with pick 35 in the 2026 NFL Draft. The New Orleans Saints select quarterback Ty Simpson out of Alabama. This kid has been consistent. He's only thrown one interception all year. He's 6'2", 208 pounds. So there's the physical limitation. Granted, 2 inches taller than Drew Brees, but Rattler's 6'1". You get to that 6'2" point, you start to feel okay as far as height goes. 208 pounds, he's a little light to me. And of course, he's not going to have the strongest arm in the world. But what he does have is the ability to process. He's quick with his trigger, and he's very good at reestablishing position, going through his reads. He's got good release with the ball. It's, not an issue for him to find the lane and get rid of the ball. He's got accuracy. He can layer passes. He's been very consistent all year long. He's just not physically gifted as some of the other quarterbacks. He's a junior. There's a chance he goes back to school. This is his first year starting with Alabama. And, people have him as a first round projection right now. So I think he's going to come out. And if he does and falls to the second round, here we go. Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler. We've got another second round quarterback coming in, Shuck. And Shuck may be a lot taller, might be more physically gifted, but yeah, Simpson's a better processor than both of those guys. Simpson's better in the pocket when it comes to adjusting and passing than both of those guys. Rattler has the ability to escape, but I'm okay with this. We have a pick 3 picks later. And at that point, I'm really interested in getting a wide receiver, but the value isn't there. The receivers, there was a big run on receivers at the end of the first round, and the value just isn't there at wide receiver for me at this point. So, as a Saints fan, we need a big wide receiver. I don't want to draft a guy just because he's big. I want to get a playmaker too. And it's not coming for me with the 38th overall pick. But there is a player there, the best at his position, who's still on the board. And it's a position of need for the Saints as great as wide receiver. And that's where I'm going with pick 38 in the second round of the 2026 NFL Draft. The New Orleans Saints select, and pardon my language here, Olaiva Vega Ione. Ione. I'm saying all of that completely wrong. I know that's not how you pronounce his name. the top rated offensive guard out of Penn State. So I'm going to call him Ola, and we're going to leave it at that. Ola is 6'4", 330 pounds. He's a junior, and he's an impressive specimen. He's good at pass blocking, good at run blocking. The best guard in the draft. I think he's first round caliber type player, and you get one of those at the end of the first round. There was a run on wide receivers. It makes sense for me. And that's who we get. So the first two rounds of the draft are over with, and the Saints haven't addressed wide receiver yet. But we didn't trade away either Olave or Rashid and acquire picks from the draft picks we started with here either. So there's a few wide receivers in this draft class, and there's some guys that are still there that I really like. And Simpson, we're going to see if that's a pick that turns out okay. If he turns out, and we still have to see what we have with Shuck. But if Simpson turns out to be our starting quarterback of the future, then, that's the only pick to me that's kind of iffy. Other than that, we have a starting cornerback, a starting edge rusher, and now a starting guard. And in my life, we don't resign Trevor Penning. He's gone. We still have a weak link with Cesar Ruiz at right guard, but now we have the best guard coming out of college to start at left guard. And yeah, I like Ola a lot. And that's a guy that I'm looking at. So in the simulation, we have two third round picks, pick 66 and pick 69. And with pick 66, I finally addressed wide receiver, a guy that is a stud and everybody knows it. If you're an LSU fan, you don't like the team he plays for, but man, if he played for you, you'd be happy to get him. I am going with, at pick 66 in the third round of the 2026 NFL Draft, wide receiver Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama. Now, I drafted the quarterback, and now I've got his number one wide receiver with him. I didn't really intend to do that, but Bernard's one of those guys that's just a stud. He's a playmaker. He's a guy that gets open. He's a guy that makes clutch catches. He's a guy that can score. He's a guy that can catch balls all over the field. And he's a guy that's pretty tough. 6'1", 204 pounds. He's a senior. He's always been a steady contributor, but this year he's the go-to guy and he's making plays. He's running the ball and he's just a clutch guy, getting first downs, touchdowns. We need a playmaker on this team. A guy with enough size to get in the middle of the field and do some dirty work too, and you don't have to worry about it all so much. And so is Jeremy Bernard going to be an addition along with Olave and Rashid and Devon Vele? We hope that's going to make something happen on offense. Well, Simpson becomes our quarterback in this fantasy realm. Yeah, I think Jeremy Bernard, you're going to want to have him out there. I think that connection continues, and yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. So, pick 69 in the third round comes up, and I have an offer to trade down. And since I only have three picks left, I'm interested, and I entertain it, and it comes to fruition. The Washington Commanders want to trade up from pick 78 to pick 69. And I make the swap with them, and I drop 9 spots at the end of the third or the middle of the third round here. It's actually the from the top of the third round to the middle of the third round. So it's not too big of a drop for me. I have several players that I want, and I believe one of them's going to be there if I make this move. And in return, I'm going to get a fifth round pick, pick 153 overall, and I'm going to get a sixth round pick, pick 215. Now, in some simulations, 215 might be the first seventh round pick. In this one, it's one of the last six round picks. So it's basically a seventh round pick, but it's two extra picks. I'm moving down 9 spots. I already got a top notch third rounder, and a player I want is certainly going to be there. I make the move. I'm very excited too because that adds two more draft picks It brings our total to 10. It's a pretty good spot to be in. Um, when the pick finally comes up for the Saints, pick 78 in the third round of the 2026 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select tight end Max Clare out of Ohio State. He's a pretty good tight end, 6'5", 243 pounds. I like my tight ends to be at least 250 because then I know I'm going to get a stud at run blocking. And there's another guy, a tight end out of Texas called Indries. I think that's his name. And he's proving to be at around 240 something pounds like Claire. He's proven to be a really good run blocker. I need to see more from Claire overall. In this simulation, injuries was gone. And Claire is typically the second rated tight end in the draft. So to get him in the third round is a good move for the Saints, especially the middle of the third round. Claire is a complete tight end. At 243, he's not 250, but he's not 231 like Juwan Johnson. So I think Claire comes in and he becomes an all around player for you. Morrow is 251. So Claire is 10, but 8 pounds less than, you know, Morrow, but I think there's some potential here with Claire to develop into an all-around tight end. Jawan needs to be our receiving tight end. He doesn't need to be out there run blocking. So yeah, we get Max Claire tight end with that second, third round pick, and I'm pretty stoked about that. Now, instead of having two picks to go, we have four, and I'm excited about that too. Fifth round starts with pick 144 in the fifth round of the 2026 NFL Draft. The New Orleans Saints select safety Earl Little Jr. out of Florida State. Earl Little Jr. has some playmaking capabilities to his game, that's for sure. He's 6'1", 193 pounds. He's a junior. And yeah, there's a couple of games this year where Earl Little pops off. And yeah, he's a playmaker. Now, he's a fifth round pick. We're going to try to get him in the rotation. We've already got Jordan Howden, who was a fifth round pick, and we'll see if Earl Little can do something here. We're kind of relying on Terrell Burgess as our fourth safety. There's the potential we re sign Julian Blackman next year and add him to the mix along with our rookie stud Jonas Sanker and our 11, $12 million a year Justin Reed addition, who we'll have for 2 more years. But I think Earl Little Jr. comes in here and makes enough plays to make Terrell Burgess obsolete. Burgess is a necessary piece for somebody that knows this defense and has veteran experience and stuff like that. But Sanker keeps performing like he is. You can't keep him off the field. Reed has a couple of Super Bowl rings, so he definitely is a veteran presence in that room. You don't need to keep Burgess for that. So you're going to roll with Jordan Howden and Earl Little Jr. as your backups, along with whatever's on the practice squad. And it's only 9 picks later, and we get another pick in the fifth round. And with pick 153 in the fifth round of the 2026 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select center Jake Slaughter out of Florida. Slaughter's a really good player. In some of the simulations, you see him as a second or third round projection. Now, do we need a center if Eric McCoy is healthy and plays? Heck no. A center will never see the field as long as McCoy's playing. But he's missed 10 games last year. He's going to miss 10 games this year. And even though he's still kind of young, I think McCoy's only 28 or 29. He's still pretty young. And you have him for a couple of more years. I like the idea of having a backup. I don't know if Jake Slaughter has the ability to learn guard and be a backup center slash guard for the team. He's 6'5", 303 pounds. He is a senior. He's had a lot of time in college. You kind of want your guards to be closer to 320, 325. Slaughter's only 303 pounds. But Slaughter's a talented player, and I like it. there may be there may be a year coming up in the next couple of years where McCoy is a tradable dude, especially if these injuries keep happening. I'm covering my bases, so hopefully Slaughter can learn how to play guard, and we have ourselves a nice slash guard, center slash guard. But uh, there's some ability here with Slaughter at center. It may be a jewel in the rough here. Does Slaughter become your starting center and good enough to make McCoy expendable? That would be a dream scenario. But I do address the interior offensive line with that pick. We have two more picks to go in the sixth round. With our original sixth round pick, pick 182 overall in the 2026 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select wide receiver Nicholas Harbor out of South Carolina. Now, Harbor is another one of those that fluctuates from simulator to simulator. There's one simulator where you better take Harbor in the second round, otherwise you're not going to get him. There's another simulator where you better take him in the third round because he's gone by the time day three starts. But in this simulation, he's still there at the top of the sixth round. Nick Harbor is 6'5", 235 pounds. 6'5", 235. A big dude. We're talking Marcus Colston size dude. Harbor's a wide receiver, and there's no one thinking he's going to have to play tight end. He's a decently productive receiver. He's a junior, and man, that size is impressive. So that's why I'm attracted to him. I thought getting a receiving tight end with this kind of size would be a nice piece to get. You know, you have Juwan Johnson for a couple of more years, but yeah, I'm kind of done with Johnson. I'm ready to move on from him. I've already drafted a tight end who I expect to be our starter. But yeah, I'm not going to shy away from a playmaker, a receiving threat, a receiving type, whether that's a really big receiver or, you know, a tight end that lacks some run block. But Nick Harbor can run block pretty good. He's a big dude. We got a receiver in Jeremy Bernard, but at 6'1", Bernard's not in the, you know, intimidating size that Nick Harbor is. And like I said, Harbor will probably be gone in reality and not available in the sixth round, but he was there and I took him. And with my last sixth round pick, which is basically a seventh round pick, pick 215 overall, the New Orleans Saints select cornerback Malik Muhammad out of Texas. This is another guy who fluctuates in the simulators. I've seen him as a second round pick projection. I've seen him as a third round projection. I think he exists somewhere around the third round or fourth round in most simulators. You'd have to get him in the third round if you really want him. He's an okay player. He's having ups and downs this year. He's 6 foot, 188 pounds, and he is a junior. So 6 foot cornerback. We've already got a cornerback in Germad McCoy, who's 6 foot. But yeah, I think if a talent like Muhammad, if he's still there, bottom of the sixth round, top of the seventh round, you definitely get him. Probably not going to be here in reality. But in this simulator, he was, and I took him. So that concludes our draft 2026. We end up with 10 overall picks because we trade down twice. We end up with two ones, two twos, two threes, two fives, and two sixes. This is a very realistic scenario outside of the fact that probably included would also be some extra draft capital we pick up at the trade deadline. This simulator doesn't let you trade players, but I'm certain that the Saints in reality are going to trade some players and acquire extra picks. We're not going to go into the draft with just 5 picks. The compensatory pick would give us 6. I think we're going to trade away a couple of players. Now, that would give us 8 picks, and that would be great, but there's also a chance we trade picks. Because we've been doing that a lot lately, trading picks. Might be late picks, but we're not going to get great picks from a lot of the guys we get rid of if we do clean house to an extent before the trade deadline. So In mine, we don't have those extra picks trading players away, and we still get 10 players. That's the big board right there. Ruben Bane, the best player in college, comes to the Saints. He's an edge rusher, and Cameron Jordan can now retire, go into the Saints Ring of Honor, hopefully the NFL Hall of Fame. And we've got a guy that's so talented, he's going to make Granderson expendable because I think Chase Young and Ruben Bain would be a awesome edge rushing duo to deal with. For the opposition, Ruben Bain, great player. And then also the starting cornerback, Germad McCoy, just a super talent. This makes Quincy Riley as a nice rotation piece instead of a guy you depend on to start. Does Riley become better than McKinstry? Is McCoy going to be a starter to begin with? We'll see. But I like this. You go in with McCoy and McKinstry. You've got Riley as a guy that can play some downs. You re-sign Alante Taylor. Otherwise, maybe Quincy Riley learns the nickel. You know, so you got to have depth at DB. Yeah, you know, you're one injury away from Isaac Yiadom starting a bunch of games. You lose your compensatory fourth round pick for sure, and you're not sure what's happening with Isaac Yiadom. So think of it that way if you question the first round pick of a cornerback. You're one injury away from Isaac Yiadom getting significant playing time on this team. So Germad McCoy is a nice pick for me. Ty Simpson at quarterback with our first second round pick. It's the same thing as this year. Why did I do it? Well, because Ty Simpson's my favorite quarterback overall right now. Like I said, the caveats, we have to look at the playoffs before we before I determine who I really want. And there's some guys I didn't have on my board at all that are shooting up. Trinidad, Chambliss, out of Ole Miss. This guy's playing a really good ball right now. And there's some guys that I really like that ain't doing so hot right now. So it's a long season. But overall, Ty Simpson's been the most impressive player to me overall from his production. What I like to see from a quarterback, a guy that can read the defense, a guy that can process, a guy that gets rid of the ball fast, a guy that can go through his progressions, and a guy that can find passing lanes despite his stature. And he's really accurate and he takes care of the ball. So the second round pick goes to the guard whose name we cannot pronounce, but Ola out of Penn State is a stud. And I am dead set on getting either a guard or a tight end with a really early draft pick. It's time, okay? In the first four rounds of the draft, this is two positions that we just don't address and we need to. Nick Saldiveri was a fourth round pick, what, 3 years ago? And that guy can't stay healthy. Give me a starting guard, please. I'm tired of Trevor Penning. Get it off my plate. And I'm tired of Cesar Ruiz. So, if you have a problem with either one of them, you shouldn't have a problem with taking a guard in the second round, the best guard in the draft. And this is a guy I'm writing in ink. This is a guy that I want to draft, regardless of the situation regarding our draft picks or the draft class in general, or what some need the Saints may have that pops rears its ugly head later on in the year. This is a guy that I really want one of the best guards in the draft on this team. Kellen Moore needs it. Our young quarterback is going to need it. We need an offensive line. I watched the Eagles play this past weekend, and I thought to myself, that's what Kellen Moore's missing. Offensive line. And when he bragged about this team spending high resources on offensive linemen, he wasn't talking about the fact that we had already done it. He was talking about the fact that he intends to do it. And I think this is something that's in play. A starting tackle out of his first draft as our coach. Let's go get a starting guard with the second draft. And yeah, let's turn a corner. In the third round, we finally addressed tight end high with Max Clare, and that's what we need. We need a tight end, not a seventh round guy like this past draft. We've been needing one in the third or fourth round for the last 3 or 4 years. All of the great players, Tucker Kraft. I mean, you can go on and on with all of them. tight ends that got picked in the third and fourth round over the last 3 years, 4 years. I've been begging for it. Let's finally do it. And we do here with Max Clare. But before him in the third round, we finally addressed wide receiver. The only slip up I would say I had in my draft. I'm not going to draft a wide receiver just because he's big in the second round when the best, in the first round when the best cornerback is still there. I wasn't going to do that. It was a chance to get Denzel Boston in the first round. I went with the cornerback instead and address wide receiver later on. There's a lot of great playmakers in this class. Wide receiver is one that I think is a pretty deep class, a deep position in this draft class coming up. So Jeremy Bernard is just a stud. AC Concepcion type of guy, except, 3 inches taller. So no, he's not the playmaker like Concepcion is, but I think Jeremy Bernard's going to be a fine pro, really good pro. I think he's going to be getting a big fat contract after that rookie deal. So I'm excited about it. And then your day three picks, we had four of them, two fifth-round picks, and safety Earl Little and center Jake Slaughter. Yeah, I like the addition of Slaughter. Give us some depth there in the middle of the offensive line. And Earl Little Jr., he's a playmaker. I think he's the kind of guy that's going to find his way on the field. And in the sixth round, the big wide receiver and Nicholas Harbor. I'd like to see a little more from him in the second half of the college season this year. But man, he's got intimidating size at 6'5", 235. Jeez. And then cornerback Malik Muhammad. Harbor and Muhammad may not be there in most simulations, but if they are there, like they were here, some easy picks for me to make for our team. So we get two wide receivers, we get two cornerbacks, we get an edge rusher, we get a quarterback, we get a couple of offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen, and we get that ever so needed edge rusher, elite edge rusher out of the class to go with the ever so needed tight end. My goodness. Yeah, I double dipped at wide receiver. Get us some size as well as a playmaker. Two different players. We'll find a spot for them. You guys let me know what you think about this draft. Let me know what you would do with the first overall pick. And if you want to get a quarterback because you're so disinterested in what's on our team right now, please let me know in the comments which quarterback you really like and why. I respond to my comments. So it's not a futile effort for you. Let me know what you think. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?